And now I'd like to call forth Meredith Morovati from Dryad. Dr. Borgman touched on the creation of various data repositories throughout the world, and we'll hear from perhaps one of the more prominent ones in the United States from Meredith.
Thank you very much. As Jerry mentioned, I'm the executive director for Dryad, and my background is in association management and journal publishing. So, Dryad has had experience working with publishers and journals to support data sharing, publishing, and I'd like to briefly describe some actions that publishers can take to support data both immediately and in the long term based upon our experience. For those who are not that familiar with Dryad, we are a curated general repository that makes data supporting publications freely usable, linked back to the article, citable, and safe for future use. Unlike other repositories, all data in Dryad is associated and linked with a peer review publication. All our data is part of an academic observation. We offer free integration that helps to support the link of data and article without the need of publishers and journals to recreate this infrastructure. This chart shows the steady growth we've had with deposits related to articles over nearly 4 years. Dryad actually created data publishing charges in 2013. We instituted a charge to continue the sustainability plan, and you can see that this did not negatively impact our growth trends. We are focused on sustainability and transparency in regards to these fees. So publishers have an important role with regards to data, and the first is to have a clear and supported policy. This figure comes from a 2011 study of 12 journals where the authors wanted to discover what fraction of articles have data available and how specifics in the journal policy affect that. Note that each bar represents a different journal. The first observation is illustrated in the first grouping from 1 through 4 and 5 through 8, is that outcomes between journals that do not have an archiving policy and those that simply recommend archiving will hardly differ. Perhaps more interesting for this group is when you view the journal groups 9 and 10 and then 11 and 12 on the right. This compares journals that mandate archiving. Note that those journals that include a data availability statement, which are shown under 11 and 12, have a much better uptake than those that do not. The takeaway is that policy will only really work with a data availability statement, and that recommending archiving is equal to no archiving policy. An example of an effective data policy from the evolution and ecology field was the Joint Data Archiving Policy, or JADA. This was adopted by major journals in ecology and evolution in 2011. JADAP requires data to be preserved and supported in an appropriate public archive at publication. At the time, embargo, including options for more than 1 year, was considered very important. So what is happening now? The first thing to note in the chart is less than 10% of the time when authors have the option they choose any embargo at all. They do not, and they are releasing at publication. And it's exceedingly rare that they ask for embargoes for over a year. So while it's an important safety valve and more important in some communities than others, if you view the requests for longer embargoes as a gauge of scientists' level of comfort in making their data available publicly, this study affirms that data sharing, once new and challenging to the community of evolution and ecology, is now an expectation within that community. A combination of policy and implementation helped to bring this about. One really useful implementation strategy that Dryad supplies is an integration of submission of data and manuscript. Integration is when Dryad's submission system is set up to automatically share metadata with the manuscript system. This is an effective way to support the link between data and article and to allow for some automation along with human curation activity. Dryad has integrated with almost 70 journals. The benefits are simple data deposition that frees the author from providing too much detailed metadata. It's all provided accurately and automatically. Links are created and will resolve according to that journal's policy and their preference, and it'll permanently point to each article. And data can be used during the review process by providing anonymous and private access to the data. This graph shows 3 integration options. Starting with the right is the acceptance workflow. This was Dryad's first integration feature, and it's shown in green. The data deposit takes place after review and acceptance. However, as more journals wanted to see data at review stage, we developed the review workflow, which is the middle one in blue. This is set up so authors go to the journal first and submit their manuscript, and then data is deposited after the manuscript, before the review process. Some journals, however, wanted to see the data first to perform checks in their system, and to support this, we developed the Dryad first workflow. This is in red and shows that data is being submitted before the article. It's being used for review. Data integration is a free service and allows publishers to support data sharing with use of the review process and permanently linking to articles and taking advantage of curation activities. This is an example of a data availability statement from the PLOS submission system and shows how the DOI can be entered. The top section is what it looks like for the author. The bottom is an example of a statement on the online article. So, what about review? Well, if you test researcher assumptions underlying the term data publishing, researchers feel that a published data set, as opposed to what they consider one merely shared, would be openly available, deposited in a repository with a unique identifier, and have formal and rich metadata. And that if the data were peer-reviewed, one main aspect would be proper metadata, as you can see underneath. In Dryad's experience, a little over half of integrated journals are asking for data for some kind of review. Publishers should begin to take advantage of making data available, if only to ensure that rich and accurate metadata is in place and to provide a way to ask questions when it is not. This is another area where publishers can act to support data and the quality of the evidence behind the article. To further support linking data and article, Dryad provides information on proper citation. This is an example of citation instructions, which is included in each data package. On the top, it shows how to cite the original publication, and underneath it shows how to cite the Dryad package, and there are links for citing and for sharing from this space. Dryad has a policy. Many groups have a varied variety of detailed recommendations, and publishers can work to inform themselves of these. Data citation principles have been recommended. For instance, the Joint Declaration of Data Citation Principles, which has a number of endorsers, including publishers. It recognizes the dual necessity of creating citation practices that are both human understandable and machine actionable. Crossref specifically says that in the citation should be in the reference section of the article and not just in line in the text. This is an example of data citation in the literature that has been done well. This is a paper that used and cited an existing data set and also deposited an original one. Books and journals have long relied on conventions of citing resources and link scholarly work to the resource. This is something that many publishers can begin on improving now, and many are doing well. So Dryad's experience. We've been focusing on data that underlies scientific literature since the beginning. We currently have 8,200 data packages that are comprised of over 25,000 different files from nearly 30,000 authors. Data in Dryad has been downloaded over 797,000 times. Again, this is all data that is underlying scientific work and scholarly work. We have integrated almost 70 journals, and are actively seeking more. But data in our system represents almost 400 different publications. Today, publishers can work to create real policies with real implementation plans to support them. They can continue to work with an appropriate data repository or more than one, and can increase the use of data in review. Publishers can also improve citation practices. Dryad will continue to work exclusively with data that supports the scholarly work and will create a low barrier for publishers to integrate so we can support various policies. To continue to provide value to our members and partners, Dryad is focusing our 2015 community meeting on the topical subject of data review. We will feature a keynote presentation from Brian Nozick from the Center for Open Science and an emerging issues panel discussion about data review. Our community meeting is one way we provide a space for collaboration with members and partners, and it provides a way for stakeholders to participate in emerging policy and implementation trends, and there are many. I'm sure many in this room have personal stories surrounding data review and publishing needs, and I'd welcome your participation in our meeting next month here in DC. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Meredith. I'm sure you'll have many questions at the conclusion of this, especially given Christine's warnings about the challenges, of financial challenges, and the ROI of running a data repository.